So many people have it wrong when it comes to the Pacers and the Oklahoma City Thunder. So many people have it wrong in terms of what is the storyline or what is the cause for concern or what is the thing that either the Thunder or the Pacers are writing that helps them win from one game to the next, or adjustments they need to make, and etc. And last night was certainly a disappointment, but I think everybody knew going in that it was going to be tough. But let's focus on the positives. It was awesome yesterday. Now, I'm not talking about the game itself, but I was thinking about this, and I came down last night, went over to Tom's Watch Bar. J&V had a viewing party going on, or was doing more so. I mean, Tom's Watch Bar is obviously a viewing party in itself. It's a fabulous venue. But John was doing a pre-pregame show from 6:30 to 7:30. So I drove down. He said, hey, you want to hop on? I said, yeah, I'll go down there and enjoy. And so I went down, and I parked, and I'm walking on Illinois, and the Arts Garden's got a huge covering on it with Aaron Neesmith and Adrian Emhard, and the One America building, the AUL building, if you're as old as I am, has the Pacer flag flying atop of it, and St. Elmo has faces of all the Pacer players hanging in the window, and Pacer flags flying everywhere, and the JW has an NBA Finals. It's awesome. Beautiful weather. I love everything about it. The city has come out of, we're like cicadas. We're like sports cicadas. We've come out of our winter, and everybody's humming and chirping along at this glorious run that the Pacers are on. 3 wins away from the NBA title. And it's so hard after the euphoria of Game 1. And people ask me a lot, like I was just in Detroit for IndyCar, and we were staying at the Motor City Casino, and I went down and I played roulette for 20 minutes. And I'm not a big gambler. And I get asked a lot, why are you not a big gambler? And I always say, because the euphoria of winning to me is not as great an emotion as the despair of losing. And the same holds true in my fandom. Game 1 was unbelievable, and there's this euphoria to it. But then they come out yesterday, and you knew going into it, hey, the Pacers have gotten 1 of 2. That's what they needed to do. They've got home court back. Now let's get greedy and go for Game 2. And yes, it's impossible to not have your brain start racing and think, if they're up 2-0, man, it feels like then it's over. But Oklahoma City flexed the muscle that they have been able to flex all year, and now this cloud of a loss, seemingly that despair and that frustration, to me, is a greater emotion than the buzz and the euphoria that we had after the win in game number 1. But we're not going to focus on that today. We're not. Because I have made a pact to myself in this, my 52nd year on planet Earth, closing in on the end of 52 and headed towards 53. I have decided that we are going to be glass half full, optimism galore. And I've been a realist, not an optimist nor a pessimist my entire life. But here we go. Here's the optimism. Number 1, this is a best-of-5 series, and 3 of those are in Indianapolis. If the Pacers just hold serve at home, it's over. Play in the parade. Easier said than done. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was again phenomenal. And this is where people get it wrong. They get it wrong. I saw today all these articles, all these columns, all this speculation, all of this breaking it down, and experts and gurus and everything else. And they were all saying, the Pacers can't stop Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. There's the key to Oklahoma City. They can't stop Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They don't have anybody that can guard him. He said Benedict Mathurin was too small. Everybody else seems to be too slow. He's too good. He's averaging now, 36 a game? through the first two games. But that's where people are wrong. It's never been about stopping Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. It's never been about that. Nobody can. He's the most valuable player in the league. He has an unbelievable mid-range game. He's got a very good step-back game. And he gets to the free throw line very effectively. He's a great player. What beat Indiana last night and what helped them win in Game 1 was the lackluster play in Game 1, primarily of Chet Holmgren, and then as well Jalen Williams. You know that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is going to get his 35. You cannot have those other two guys combined for 35. And that's their average, granted, but that's why Oklahoma City won 68 games. You've got to find areas where you can limit Oak City, and limiting the auxiliary scores is what Indiana needs to do, and they need to do it more effectively. Now, granted, outside of that, they did, in fact, limit just about everybody. But I think Holmgren in particular getting going early, that then makes it just too big a challenge because that gets Williams going and you spread out and et cetera. And that was an issue for the Pacers. Then comes the other story where everybody's got it wrong, and that's that of Tyrese Halliburton. Tyrese Halliburton struggled yesterday. Struggled. Undeniable. He did not have his vintage Tyrese Halliburton performance. Truthfully, I don't know that he did really in Game 1 until the heroics in the end. But last night, he had 17. Many of those were late. 3 rebounds, 6 assists, but 5 turnovers. That's uncharacteristic of Tyrese Halliburton, 5 turnovers. And so the narrative, the easy narrative, I'm not going to say the lazy narrative because I don't want to be that guy, but the glossing over and just going by box score narrative would be Tyrese Halliburton didn't show up. Tyrese Halliburton isn't a superstar because he wasn't ready for the big stage. Tyrese Halliburton simply needs to be better. Tyrese Halliburton is distracted by the fact that his dad's now back in the building and his girlfriend's apparently like shouting at fans in the crowd. Tyrese Halliburton has to watch Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and realize what a true superstar is. But here's what is the missed point. Eddie, you said this before we went on the air, and it's an excellent point. Tyrese Halliburton is going up against a historically elite defense. And so if you were to look at his scoring as the lone indicator of his effectiveness, then you are missing the point. There is no denying that Tyrese Halliburton yesterday did not take care of the basketball and was too late to be aggressive offensively. But that is as much about what's being given to him as anything else. And if you've been paying attention, you know that the Oklahoma City Thunder in this particular game, in this particular matchup, in this particular player, this has been the team that has been the most effective in corralling Tyrese Halliburton. And it's the opposite of Oklahoma City's storyline. And to an extent, Oklahoma City, their storyline is they know what Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is going to get. They've got to hope they get it from elsewhere. In the Pacers' case, you almost went into it knowing what you're not going to get out of Tyrese Halliburton, and thus it's elsewhere that you're going to get those players, and Indiana's been able to get good minutes from those players, Nesmith and Turner, and, you know, consistency. Now, if you were going to point out anybody last night, truthfully, it may be Pascal Siakam, because Siakam's the guy that is your veteran that's been there. Siakam's the guy that should be your effective, reliable. If Halliburton can't get you baskets, if Halliburton if they are literally cutting off the snake at the head and Halliburton's not able to get going offensively, then what he needs to be able to do is be reliant upon the fact that then as a distributor, the ball is going to go to an offensive operating area that's of high efficiency for them, and that would be Pascal Siakam. And if Siakam's going to go 3 for 11 in games, I don't care what Halliburton does. So, yes, Halliburton gets some criticism, but he also didn't get a whole lot of help anywhere else until it was too late. Now, one thing, and Eddie Garrison, I want you to tell me if you agree or disagree with this. And by the way, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jake Query. It is Query & Company here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Eddie Garrison, the other voice you hear on this program, who also is the producer for the Pacers Radio Network. On today's show, Jeff Foster, who has played the fourth highest number of games with the fourth highest number of career rebounds in Pacer history, going to join us 2 o'clock today. We might get some insight from Jeff just on, I thought rebounding was a huge key for Oklahoma City. In particular, their offensive rebounds, and the Pacers' lack of defensive boards to give Oak City second and third shots. Very frustrating. But Jeff Foster going to join us at 2 o'clock today. And there is a huge story in the NCAA that I thought was interesting and I think impactful because the NCAA is based here in town. And I thought personally, number one, that it was a huge story. And number two, I thought it was worth getting into just to kind of get us away from the disappointment of the Pacers game for a couple of minutes, because I don't want to do 3 hours of doom and gloom about the Pacers, because we're optimistic about it because they still have home court advantage, but yesterday clearly was disappointing. But the other thing that with this particular game and this particular matchup that you have to look at, and Eddie, you had made the point about Tyrese Halliburton and the fact that the way that they limit him is the way that he's always kind of struggled against this team. Mm-hmm. I thought personally, and I want you to tell me if I'm way off base here, and I probably am. I was surprised. I'll use the word disappointed for lack of a better one. The Pacers, I think, had it down to 17 or 15 with like 3 minutes to go when they basically waved the white flag and did full substitutions.
After Tyrese hit the three, Oklahoma City called the timeout, and then they elected to bring in Johnny Furphy in place of Tyrese. Is that where you were alluding to?
Yeah, yes. And so here's my thing. And then very shortly thereafter, James Johnson's in and whatever else, and you know that the white flag's been waved. Given the history of this particular team, I know that it's ludicrous to think, but there was part of me that was like, don't you run with that until the end and just see what your chances are based on the history of this particular team? Now, that leads me then to wonder whether or not, because he was gimpy after the game, whether or not there wasn't something with Tyrese Halliburton that the Pacers were aware and wanted to get him off the floor from a health standpoint. I'm not trying to make a mountain out of a molehill here. I don't know that. I just was surprised, though, that they didn't run with their starting unit until the end of the game. Look, I'm not here to question Rick Carlisle by any stretch of the imagination, and they would know better than I. So I would imagine there is a plausible explanation. But Eddie, am I yelling at clouds there, or is that a fair question to be raised?
I see it from both perspectives. I see it from the perspective of what you're saying is like, hey, you've amounted numerous comebacks this postseason in the final minutes of the fourth quarter, but it just felt different last night compared to some of these other games. They never had the momentum, it felt like, and every time they'd make like a 4 or 5 point, cut into the deficit of Oklahoma City's advantage, Oklahoma City just pushed it right back out.
Correct.
Like, they had answers for everything, and I don't think Indiana was going to be put in any position last night to have a comeback. So taking Tyrese out of the game I don't think is that big of a deal. Now, I am curious to see if there was something going on, and that is what ultimately led to Rick Carlisle not bringing the starters back in and pulling Tyrese in place of Johnny Furphy. He was limping coming off the podium. It looked like Jake, you said you're 52. It kind of looked like someone your age when they have to get up out of bed or get up out of a chair from sitting down for so long, and they just kind of take a minute, and you're like, you got to stretch the back out a little. That's how it looked like with Tyrese last night getting up.
I don't know anything
off the podium.
I have no idea what you're talking about. I get out of bed in the morning, and it's like, I look like Edwin Moses. It's like, let's go. I have no idea what you're talking about. Yes, you are correct. In both areas, you're right. And he has Halliburton, an ongoing back thing, correct, for quite some time.
Yeah.
Again, they're going to run with him. It's not like in the NBA Finals suddenly they're going to give him rest. I get it. Except for in the last 3 minutes of that game, perhaps that's what that was. Was that Rick Carlisle saying, you know what, it's not our night. We got the one we needed here. we're just going to go ahead and get a couple extra minutes of rest? Or was that them saying, you know what? Something looks wrong with Halliburton. I don't think it's the latter, but I don't know that it can necessarily 100% be ruled out.
Now, it's worth noting that pretty much all Pacers players were on a time crunch last night for post-game media availability, so they could not follow up with Tyrese about that.
Why were they on a time crunch?
Because they had to get to the plane or get to the bus. They had to be out at like 10:35, or it was like 10:30, so they had very minimal time.
Did they fly Southwest Airlines? Like, was there a late check-in time? I mean, they fly charter, right? It's wheels up when everyone arrives.
Well, yeah, I mean, the bus leaves at a certain time, though, to get to the said airport.
Was the bus, did they have a hard out on the bus time that they rented? Was it an Uber?
I don't know.
Did they have the clock ticking? What's going on there? That's convenient. I'll say that. That's convenient. But by and large, the bus and the plane are on the, I would imagine, the agenda of the team, right? I mean, was the bus company going to say, like, look, guys, at 10:30, Frank's on overtime? I'm just saying, for what that's worth. But either way now, tied at a game apiece, back to Indianapolis for game number 3. And how awesome is it going to be on Wednesday and Friday? Electric. And you've got to hold serve at home. Got to. You go up 3-1, you feel pretty darn good about it. You go 2-2 back to Oak City, now you've got some challenges. Now, I thought I read today that in a 1-1 series tie, that the winner of Game 3 goes on to win something like 70 or 80% of the series, right? Now, a lot of that probably is dependent upon how often, I'm not a math major, so then it becomes confusing. But I would imagine the home team in Game 3 wins more often than not. But if the road team, the team that has already lost home court advantage, retakes home court advantage by winning Game 3, then I would imagine that number is way higher, right? Like, what percent of teams that go up 2-1 by winning Game 3 on the road then turn around and still lose the series? I would imagine it's pretty nil. But nonetheless, we can break down the math all we want. Speaking of math, not a strong suit of mine. But an interesting thing happened on Friday, and I'm not sure exactly what time this came out. But in short, and I'm going to speak this as if we're all fourth graders. Not because you folks are fourth graders. You're not. Who was your fourth grade teacher, Eddie?
Mr. Day.
Mr. Day?
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. Was this before he went to Ohio State?
No relation.
Did you like Mr. Day?
I did. Very cool guy.
Is he still there?
No.
Really?
Retired.
Oh, so he's Mr. Knight now.
I guess.
Turn the page, right?
Sure.
Okay, so my fourth grade teacher, Mrs. Ritchie. So if we were going to talk about this in fourth grade terms, but I do think it's interesting, and I think it has a lot of ramification here in Indianapolis, as well as elsewhere. On Friday, it was ruled by a judge, Claudia Wilkin, the Honorable Claudia Wilkin, if I'm not mistaken. She made a ruling off of a settlement of House versus the NCAA. Now, what this means, boys and girls, is this. There is an organization called the NCAA, and they oversee every college in the United States that is within the partnership of the National Collegiate Athletic Association. So they are essentially they're like the principal. And all the boys and girls at the different schools and in the different classrooms all have to adhere to the same rules to make sure that everybody's getting the same chance, whether they have Mrs. Ritchie or Mr. Day or whoever their teacher is, that everybody's getting the same opportunities and the same benefits by being in the school at the NCAA and playing sports. And that has long been a contention that, wait a minute, if these universities and these schools and all these different classrooms, Mrs. Ritchie's class and Mr. Day's class, if they're making all kinds of money from people wanting to just simply come and observe and watch little Eddie and little Jake in class and see what they do and how they're learning, and then, give more money to Mr. Day and Mrs. Ritchie's class based on the performance of said students, then the students should get part of the sales for that. They should be rewarded for that above and beyond simply the fact that they get an A+ and a gold sticker on their paper. And Mrs. Ritchie and Mr. Day are making a lot of money based on these kids. And so the NCAA, with all of the money that comes in from television revenue and elsewhere, their one rule was, in order to keep things fair and balanced in college athletics, we need to make sure that all students are getting equal opportunity and nobody is getting additional benefit from one school that they can't get at another. And then somebody finally said, wait a minute, television contracts are out through the roof, and these schools and these athletes are making billions of dollars for their university. And this is the United States, a free market capitalistic society. So if you are somebody that is generating that kind of revenue, then why aren't you getting your own slice of the pie? And so this went to the Supreme Court in 2021. The Supreme Court unanimously ruled against the NCAA and said these payments should be, there should be some sort of a compensation for these athletes that their efforts are being deemed worth this amount of money. And so the NCAA said, wait a minute, and I don't know if they appealed it or whatever it was, but it ultimately went to a House ruling of how this was going to be dispersed and whether or not athletes who already have played in sports should be compensated as well. So there was I believe it was $28 or $20.8 billion amount of money, a hopper there, that they said if you are an athlete between 2016 and now, you are basically like a class action lawsuit. You are entitled to compensation for your efforts over the last 10 years. That money is going to go out. And then they said, now what we're going to do moving forward is each school is going to get essentially a salary cap of $20.5 million to pay athletes directly. So now if you are the quarterback at Ohio State, or you are the point guard at Kentucky, or you are the javelin thrower at San Jose State, you are able to negotiate what that school is going to pay you to do that. And so therefore, when the NCAA at one time said, our job is to make sure that it's even keel across the board, now the NCAA's job is suddenly, now we have to make sure that everybody is staying within the salary cap, and it's up to that school to determine how they want to divvy up that money. Could it be that the quarterback at Ohio State is making $15.5 million per year, and that means that $5 million is distributed amongst their other 2,000 athletes? Possibly. I don't know. There's a lot to unpack in that regard. But the bottom line, now that I've made it too complicated for our fourth grade class, boys and girls, what I'm saying is this. The NCAA, against their will, is now being told that they have to pay players. And now it becomes a question of how much do you pay them and who regulates that. And that's the challenge. Who regulates that? Or is this just the wild, wild west and we are now seeing semi-pro sports at the NCAA level, and it's all a facade that somebody that has on the jersey of a big university and is getting a check for $2 million, they're not actually anymore going to that school for the sake of the degree that they can get or the programs within education. They're doing it because they're paying them the most money in this semi-pro system. Basically what this means is we now have clarification of what we've known all along. This is semi-pro, and now it's pro. It's not even semi-pro. It's professional. It's a professional league, and universities are now franchises. But I wanted to get the specifics on what it means. Is this advantage or disadvantage for the smaller guys? Does it even things out, or does it not? Julie Rolash is the commissioner of the Horizon League, going to join us at 1:30 today. And then Luke Basso, who is the athletic director at IU Indy, going to join us at 2:30 today to give kind of the perspective of, from the commissioner standpoint and an athletic director standpoint, what this means and how you balance it. And I promise we will speak it in much more clear terms than I just tried to lay out. Jeff Foster at 2 o'clock as well. Chap going to join us 1 o'clock. Still Colts news to talk about, including we've got a potentially, gimpy back or ankle of Tyrese Halliburton, whatever we think it might be. And then we've got the gimpy shoulder of Anthony Richardson, right?
And a player that was just released that has familiarity with Lou Anarumo by the Cincinnati Bengals.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we'll tell you who that is on the other side. We'll get back into the Pacers conversation on this Monday edition. Query and Company. You're listening to it on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. You know, it's interesting because last night as I was watching the game, and everybody talks about how loud that arena is, two things I will say about Oklahoma City, and maybe it's not wise of me to sit here on Indianapolis radio during the thick of an NBA Finals matchup between Indianapolis and Oklahoma City, but I talked to, I had a buddy that went to game one, and he's like, dude, it was loud, sure, but they're like the nicest fans. Like, there's no hostility, there's no tension, or the kind of stuff that raises your blood pressure when you watch fans, getting in your grill and that kind of thing.
So what you're saying is they're not throwing bags of trash on Pacers fans?
Yeah, I mean, there seems to be some civility about it, right? And speaking of the bags of trash, Naptown Seth, who went to the game, did, and I thought this was cool, and I appreciated it. He did kind of a video tour of Oklahoma City. He went around the city on Saturday just showing their downtown and their canal area and different parks and things. And it looks like – I've never been to Oklahoma City, but it looked like a nice city. I mean, I was like, man, it looks spotlessly clean, and he said it was very clean. I didn't know this either. This blew me away. Do you know about the skyscraper being built in Oklahoma City, Eddie?
Nope.
They're building a building, redundant, in Oklahoma City currently that's going to be 139 stories.
Really?
It's going to it will be the tallest building in the United States, the tallest building in North America. Not the tallest structure, that would be the CN Tower in Toronto, but taller than the Freedom Tower in New York City. In Oklahoma City, did they have that many offices there? What? There's oil money there, I think, right? But I thought the oil money was all in Tulsa. But yeah, they're building 130, is either 130 or 139 stories. Now, Matt, maybe we should do that in Indy. In Indy, I think we should. I think at one time there was always this, in Indianapolis, there was always this urban legend that no building here could be over 78 stories because of flight patterns, because we're the crossroads of America. And now I realize that all just was window dressing to make us not feel as bad about ourselves because we didn't have enough commerce here to build huge skyscrapers. But I think what we should do, if Oklahoma City's got a building that's 139 stories, we should build one that's 140, and we don't even have to have anything in it for literally it can be 5 stories of it'd be 3 of offices because nobody works downtown anymore, 2 of residences because apparently people moved to downtown, and then 135 just empty spots. No, just filled concrete for 130 just to make it tall. Why not? Well, let's just build another 100-story structure and just plant it on top of the Salesforce Tower. Take off the big towers, just fix it like a Lego piece. Put it on top. You said there's a player from Cincinnati that it is not big buildings, but perhaps a defensive coordinator that could lure him and interest him here, correct?
That is what I said.
Okay, and that would be?
That would be Jermaine Pratt. He was the team's leading tackler last year, over 100 tackles in the last 2 seasons, and he was the team captain as well for Cincinnati, and they released him today. He saves them a little over $5 million in cap space, and wonder if that's to help bring Trey Hendrickson back or renegotiate a contract there. But with the uncertainty at the linebacker position right now for Indianapolis, I would assume that there would be some mutual interest there.
By the way, Eddie, do you have the breaking news sounder while we're at it? I would like to report, it has just been reported to me that apparently our show is being broadcast live over the speakers at the Circle K in Brownsburg.
Really?
Attention, shoppers. Strange things are afoot in the Circle K. I love Circle K. I'm a fan of Circle K. There's all kinds of stuff to get there. Circle K, as a matter of fact, I might even franchise Circle K for the Quarry Gas and Gulp when I open up on I-69, where we're going to sell nothing but combos, fountain drinks, dip, and clean bathrooms as the only stop between Bedford and Evansville. But I would like to thank the Circle K in Brownsburg for having us on. That's very cool. I don't know, do you think there are people right now? I'd like to know if anybody right now, if you're in the Circle K in Brownsburg right now, you need to right now get out your phone right now, and I need a photo from the Circle K in Brownsburg. Now, my cell phone number, if you're standing right now in the Brownsburg Circle K, 317-523-9288.
9288.
9288.
Pretty sure everyone in this city has your number by now.
Send me
Jake.
a photo that says, yes, I'm standing right now. I just heard you. Get out your phone right now and type it in. Get to the messages and 317 and then 523 and then 9288. And if you're right now in the Brownsburg Circle K, then I want a photo right now of it. You think there's anybody in there actually?
Why would you want a photo and not a video? That way there's proof of audio.
Video. Oh, that's excellent. Yes, if we could get just slight, that would be awesome. That would be awesome if we could just get video of them actually playing the station and the show inside. That would be tremendous. And we're grateful for it. Linebacker is an area, Eddie, that it would appear the Colts perhaps could use some bolstering because there's some uncertainty with E.J. Speed's departure, for example. I think it's an area that they are very high on Jalen Carlisle. I hope I'm saying his last name correct. I always forget. I always want to say Carlos, but I know it's Carlisle. Out of Missouri. They're very high on him, but he was injured last year, right?
Missouri. Yeah, he's coming off shoulder surgery.
And so they're counting on him there, but is this an area now where you can get some depth or some stability there, or do you outside and not Mike, as they call it, middle linebacker, but would it be helpful to get somebody who has experience under Lou Anarumo's defense?
I would certainly think it would, and not to mention, you didn't note that Zaire Franklin's currently not on the practice field because he had a ankle surgery or procedure or something in the offseason, and so right now the only healthy linebacker is neither of their starters. It's one of the reserves in Cameron McGrone and Liam Anderson. Those are the two starting linebackers right now if they had to lace up and play week 1 this Sunday. So having some depth there, and we talk about competition a lot, and we talked about it a lot with Anthony Richardson and Chris Ballard saying that they need more competition at certain spots because it brings out the best of players. Why not bring in a vet who has experience underneath Lou Anarumo to challenge Jalen Carlisle?
All right, let's get back to the Pacers, though, Eddie. I want to know your level of concern over and I will admit, I have a little bit of a concern here, but I want your thoughts. Are we worried that there is a health issue with Tyrese Halliburton?
I'm not overly worried because there wasn't any major note of it. It was just the video that Scott Agnes tweeted out of him leaving the podium, and it looked like he just looked sore. Like, it looked like the guy who was battling some soreness or something. And the old cliche, Jake, if you ask a player, he goes, "Oh well, it's June. Everyone's dealing with something. Everyone's playing through something." So I'm not overly concerned, but if it does crop up in the next game, then it'll be on my radar.
Yeah, I think you touched on something there that I talk about a lot on this show. When it comes to Tyrese Halliburton.
Everyone's dealing with something?
And that's like an REM song, right? But yes, to an extent. I'll get into it in a second. We have tickets to give away as well, correct?
Yeah, we do. We do, Jake, to go see Seether and Daughtry on October 15th at Everwise Amphitheater.
Oh, it'd be perfect. October? That is perfect. The weather's it'll be perfect. 60-degree night, clear night in October. A couple of weeks away from Halloween. You're starting to think about your Halloween costume. When are we going to give those away? Do we know?
At some point between now and 3 o'clock.
All right. Mike Chappell going to join us 1 o'clock. Other side, I'm going to get into what I talk about on this show in terms of precedent and how it relates to the Pacers and what we can learn from last night. Back into it. 1-1 NBA Finals. Pacers 3 wins away. But it's about to get tougher. We'll explain next. One of the things I talk about on this program, probably more than any other, is precedent. And I remember years ago complaining to my dad, which was probably not uncommon, of what I found to be unfair coverage of Bob Knight by whether it was local media, national, I don't know. But I was a big IU fan. And we were watching an IU Purdue game, and Gene Cady was doing the thing where he'd storm the sidelines and emphatically motion that there was a traveling call and then throw his arm. Might have thrown off his jacket. And I said, see, Dad, look. Like Gene Cady acts just as nuts on the sidelines, and nobody talks about it. And my dad said, Jake, Bob Knight once threw a chair. Bob Knight once slapped a police officer, allegedly. Bob Knight once put a fan in a trash can. There's precedent of his behavior crossing the line. And eventually, when you have precedent, it forces you to see things with a little less benefit of doubt. There is precedent for Tyrese Halliburton's play to be impacted and affected by not debilitating injuries, but rather consistently nagging ones. And the only reason I bring that up, if Tyrese Halliburton after the game was hobbled or slow in his movement, you are correct, Eddie, in the fact that at this point in the year, probably most players are like that. And you just got done playing in an NBA game, your body probably is sore once you slow down. Or maybe you simply took a knee to the thigh at one point and it's bruised and it's just a little bit sore and you didn't notice it in the moment. There are a million things and a million ways that you can break that down. And it probably is, and hopefully, that's wood I just knocked on, and my fingers are crossed, it's probably nothing. When you see him moving gingerly after a game, it's probably nothing. But the reason that it's not nothing in terms of a talking point is because there is precedent. And we have seen Halliburton have periods of slump or declined play by his own standards, mind you, to be fair to him. When I say declined play, I mean based on what we're used to seeing. But then when it goes to an extended period of time, usually there is an explanation then where you can look back on it and you go, it makes sense now. Either his hamstring was bothering him. I think it was a groin at one point was bothering him when he had the weird kind of stretch out play right after the All-Star break, I think it was. Or the lower back, and he wears the back brace thing when there's timeouts and things like that. So there's precedent and there's reason why we bring it up. But there's also an element of Indiana last night saw their floor leader in Tyrese Halliburton limited first and foremost because of the defense of the Oklahoma City Thunder, which also has precedent. His scoring average is 12 a game in the last 2 years against Oklahoma City. It's the lowest, I believe, versus any opponent in the NBA. You saw the interview with Jalen Williams. What is it you guys have been doing to limit Tyrese Halliburton? And without hesitation, he said, Lou Dort. Bingo. Arguably the best on-ball defender in the NBA. And in addition to that, Oklahoma City, they are literally, I'm on a group text with a bunch of people from high school, and somebody was talking about how Halliburton was struggling in not driving to the lane. And Casey Ward-Lewis made the greatest observation of all. They said, you simply can't do that in these moments. And she replied and said, especially against octopi, which is exactly correct. Because that defense is like the car wash. It's like trying to dribble a basketball through an active car wash at Crew Car Wash and not have one of those spinning brushes or water things hit you. That defense of Oklahoma City is so active and have so many hands coming in and knocking the ball loose almost from behind. It happened to Benedict Mathurin last night. 5 turnovers is very uncharacteristic for Tyrese Halliburton. The challenge now from a breakdown of the game is trying to determine whether or not his lackluster play last night was the result of an Oklahoma City defense that hounded him or a limitation, physically speaking, because something that's bothering him. And the challenge is there is precedent in both. There's also precedent in this. The Pacers typically, when they lose a playoff game, first off, when they lose in the playoffs, their first road loss by double digits, they come back and usually win by double digits. They've done it in all 3 series so far. And I think personally what we are going to see, because, again, I'm going to go back to my word, precedent. I'll bet you Halliburton is very aggressive off the top in game number 3. And I'll bet what we see in game 3 is the Halliburton that steps back, hits a 3, starts penetrating, then kicks it out to Miles Turner. The Pacers have used a Turner 3 or shots off the top early in games to try to massage open that Oklahoma City defense so far. I think now what we're going to see is Halliburton in game 3 trying to get that defense to be honest by being aggressive at it right from the get-go. And maybe that comes with just the comfort and familiarity of home. Bobby joins us on the program at 239-1070. That's 239-1070 in your heart. Bobby, what's up?
Hi, Jake. I know a lot of people think that the basketball sport was just invented here in the last 15, 20 years. But I've been watching. I've been a lifelong Pacers fan. I had one of the former Pacers actually live at my house when I'm a kid, i.e. Billy Keller. I've known George McGinnis all my life, so I'm a lifelong Pacers fan. But I've seen in today's version of the Indiana Pacers some of the poorest fundamentals I've ever seen. I know when I was playing 50 years ago, the coach always told me never get up in the air, jump in the air without either shooting the ball or have a plan what you're doing. And I can't tell you how many times I see today's Pacers jump in the air and all of a sudden they're doing a three-quarter flip with a half twist in it, trying to figure out how they're going to get rid of the ball. And it's very frustrating for me to watch what I think is very, very poor fundamentals in what I see today.
Now, let me ask you this, though, Bobby. And I don't fundamentally, pardon the pun, disagree with you, except for that the game itself and the athleticism and the speed of it has changed so immeasurably, right, that with that comes some alteration of style of play. But are you speaking specifically of Halliburton? Because I do agree with the penetrating and then trying to do kind of like a hook pass from midair. But more often than not, Bobby, statistically speaking, this year his assist-to-turnover ratio has been, historically great. So is your frustration based upon the latest version of what you've seen, or are you talking about over the course of the year? And even despite that, statistically, it doesn't back up that it's an issue.
Statistically, I don't think anybody can argue with what Tyrese Halliburton does on a day-in and day-out basis. It's the little things where what you're talking about earlier when you're trying to drive the ball through an octopus. It's common knowledge that you can get from point A to point B faster if you pass the ball than if you dribble the ball. If you're dribbling the ball between a forest, your chances of getting picked off or stolen or knocked away is a lot greater.
Yeah,
I'm not
fair.
arguing with Tyrese. I'm not arguing with Tyrese's Halliburton stats. I think the young man's a phenomenal ball player. I just see when some of his panic moments, when you get up in the air and you're caught with the ball in your hand, and all of a sudden. Now, granted, when I was up in the air, my hang time was a lot less than Tyrese Halliburton's was. But,
right. Did you have a hang time, Bobby? Did you have a hang time? Your hang time was after the game at Netto's, right?
After my hang time was classified, if you could see air between my feet and the floor, I just skied.
Fair enough. Here's the thing. I'll tell you the one area, Bobby, I appreciate it. One thing that does drive me crazy with that, in terms of fundamentals, and I get it. I mean, but Siakam does this a lot, and at times Halliburton does it. It drives me crazy, and that is rushing themselves at the free throw line. We mock Giannis, okay, but I'd almost rather have that than a guy that just gets up there, gets the ball, and boom, puts it up. It's like, take your time, take a deep breath, straighten your elbow. Drives me nuts. Drives me crazy. But I do think that the style of play now from – it is fascinating. If you watch games from the early 70s, really, to be honest with you, all the way up into the early 90s, Look at the Pacers when they were beating the Reggie Knicks Pacers games. Those scores were all 94 to 88, 88 to 79. The style of play now is so much faster that it necessitates faster decisions, faster movement. Mike Chappell, latest from the Colts, joining us next. Jeff Foster, Pacers, 2 o'clock. Loaded show on the Fan. Stephanie White is back with the team after missing their win against the Chicago Sky for family reasons. Back on the sidelines with the Fever at practice today. Pacers now tied at a game apiece. Game number 3 will be Wednesday at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. Should they win, they would likely get we determined it's GIF, right, Eddie? Not GIF, it's GIF, right?
Mm-hmm.
The raccoon applause GIF from Mike Chappell, who joins us now on the Ryan Geist Brewery guest line from CBS 4 and WXAN Fox 59. Chap, I want to talk Colts, obviously, but let's begin with the NBA Finals because I know you have been watching it, as has every other member of Indianapolis in the state of Indiana. I guess just overall thoughts and observations, particularly of last night for the Pacers, but now being tied at a game apiece coming back home.
Well, isn't that where you wanted to be? I mean, all things equal. I'm sure you'd like to have been 2-0, but you had to win one on the road, in certainly dramatic fashion. So they did what they needed to do. I certainly didn't like the way last night went. I never got the impression they were this close to getting back in it in the fourth quarter. I thought if they were down 12 or something at the end of 3, maybe. So I didn't like the way, for the most part, 7 quarters of that series went in the first 2 games, but you got the split. That's all you can ask for, really, against a great team. So game 3 is going to tell us a lot. It just is. And I just had to say, like everybody else, it just drives me crazy that you're going to get a game like that from Halliburton every series. It's just incredible. The 17 points are the most, misguided stat we've seen in a while because he's just got to be more aggressive. And I know OKC is all over him. It's a great defense, and it's like they got 7 guys out there playing defense. But you got to find a way. But again, 1-on-1, that's where you want to be. I'm really looking forward to game 3 just to see what the place that, they talk about how OKC is the loudest place. We'll see what Gainbridge is in game 3 because the roof will be, blown off the place. But this is probably the best scenario you could have is to come back home tied. It's a 5-game series, and you got home court advantage. That's what you want.
The one thing that's interesting to me, and you tell me if you agree with this, both teams yesterday hit 14 3-point shots. Oklahoma City was 14 of 36. Indiana was 14 of 40. It felt like the Pacers hit 1 3-pointer for every 3 that Oklahoma City made. Maybe it's just, you know what I mean? Like Oklahoma City's 14 threes, it feels like of those 14, like 12 of them were daggers. Does that make sense?
You're making that mini run and get a stop here, and then, yes. So instead of getting 2 at the other end, you're giving up 3 at the other end. I felt the same way.
Yeah, I mean,
it just didn't fit. In game 1, I kept thinking, man, they're letting the Pacers hang around.
Yeah.
It never got worse than 15, did it?
I was a little curious last night, though, Chap. And I'm not. Look, I get it. I mean, who am I from my couch to say that I have a better feel or pulse for what's going on in the game than Rick Carlisle, who's standing on the sideline? But I was a little surprised that he cleared the bench when he did, because I think at that point it was either 12 or 15 with like 3 minutes left, and Johnny Furphy comes in. I think it was 4 minutes left. He comes in for Tyrese Halliburton, and my first thought was, okay, they've waved the white flag now. And then James Johnson comes in, and I get it. And that's in 99% of cases, we don't think twice about it, except for that this group, so many times with a 12 or 15-point deficit with 3 or 4 minutes to go, you find out it ain't over. But last night, to your point, just did feel different, right?
Yeah, and maybe he felt the same way. I don't know. Maybe he felt like, listen, we've done what we needed to do, and to expect another miracle. The Colts can only come back at Tampa from 35-14 with 5 minutes played so many times.
Right.
So maybe he just felt that. So yeah, a little bit, but again, I just never felt like that they're that one shot, because every time they were that one shot away, they missed something, sometimes close to the basket, and then OKC come down and just drilled something. And I'm not new to the party, but to watch SGA, the way he plays, he gets whatever he wants whenever he wants it. It's the smoothest, 30, and it just seems like if he wanted to get 40, he could.
Well, and again, Chap, I go back to me, going in that Shea Gilgeous-Alexander is going to get his 32 or 34 points. You just know that because, to your point, he is
kind of like Mitchell with Cleveland. That's what he was
going
to get.
It's where the Pacers won game 1 and lost game 2, in my opinion, is you then let Caruso in particular and Holmgren get in rhythm. Jalen Williams, is going to get his 15 to 18. But when you start letting Caruso hit open threes and Holmgren get involved early that then spreads everything out, that's where you get in trouble. I think you just resign yourself to the 35 or the 40 to Gilgeous-Alexander. You want to make sure you're limiting his supporting cast where they're not getting 18 to 20 apiece. That's where you get in trouble.
But then he breaks down that double team out high and he gets in the middle and then he can score. Or how many times did he dish out to those open threes? He's just a great player. My goodness. He's, what is he, 25, 26? I don't know. But he's going to be a force for the next 10 years. 26
years old, yep.
Yeah, and I thought there were times Neesmith had pretty good defense on him. And it's the old thing where, great offense beats great defense. And, he's going to get his, whether it's Giannis or I guess Brunson to a lesser level. But they're going to get theirs. Don't let, somebody else go off for 20. Didn't Caruso have more points than any of the Pacers finished with? 20?
Yeah, he had 20, and the Pacers were led. I got to look here. Correct. The Pacers were led last night by Turner at 16, Halliburton at 17. And Halliburton 17, to your point, felt a little misleading, right?
Yeah. So, but again, not to belabor. We'll find out. The series, really, the series starts, was it Wednesday?
Best of 5, baby. It's a best of 5 series.
It's a best of 5. And if you told Carlisle, listen, this is going to be best of 5, and you're going to have home court, he'd say, bring it on.
Yeah, no question.
Would.
No question.
And so they're in good spots. Now, again, if they don't play better, they can't shoot whatever it was, 35%. They just can't do that. And that defense has so much to do with it. I'm not sure how you replicate that defense in practice unless you put a sixth guy on the defensive end while you're running your offense, because they just, in the more, I was listening to some stuff from Stephen Holder, who knows more basketball than I do, about how the more the Pacers dribble, the worse it is, because it allows, OKC to collapse and swarm.
Well, yeah, and what OKC has done, Mike, is I keep saying it's the second pass. The Pacers are able to set up their offense, but then that second pass on the high post that facilitates the kind of that weave of just moving the ball, the hot potato basketball, they've completely shut that off. I mean, it's the car wash, right? You can't. It's coming from every area. I mean, they're historically elite defensively.
And Rick a lot better than I do. Tell him to quit having Miles Turner handling the ball, dribbling it on the perimeter. Not a good thing, because that's not what he does, and that's not who he is.
Especially against that defense.
No, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
You put the ball down, and there's like hands all over the place. But again, they're where they need to be, and they're back home. And if they don't win it now, it's because OKC is simply a better team.
Chap, let's get to the other big story in town. Mike Chappell's our guest, Ryan Geis Brewery guest line. He is with CBS 4 and WXIN Fox 59. Let me tell you what confuses me, and I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, okay?
Okay.
When Anthony Richardson missed the majority of his rookie year to repair issues on his throwing shoulder, we were told that that was a decision that they made because it long-term was going to be in the best interest, because, yes, this is annoying that he's missing time as a rookie and missing valuable reps, but this is the thing where if we take care of this now and nip it in the bud, then we don't have to worry about it later. And yet here we are. How big a concern is the recurrence of this, and was there any way, shape, or form that they anticipated there could still this far out be soreness in the shoulder?
I would think on the last question, no, because he played all last year and it wasn't an issue. I would think if you're going to have some kind of a residual from the surgery, it would have happened in training camp in the first month or two of the season. Then when you put too much stress on the AC joint. So no, I don't think they anticipated it. And I don't know if this is just a case of overworking the arm when this was such an important off season to work on his game, work on mechanics and all that, and maybe he just flew too much. I don't know, but I'm telling you, whatever spin you put on, I saw somebody reported that Tom Pelissero or somebody where he was given 1,000% assurance that Richardson will be ready for training camp. Well, we'll see. There is no spin, that positive spin you can put on a fact that your quarterback has soreness in his right shoulder. None. C.J. Stroud in Houston is having issues or soreness, and their coach Ryan's he was asked if he had some surgery or some procedure done, and he didn't say no. He sort of talked. So I just think it's an area you can't predict. Did he throw too much? I don't know. Did he throw awkwardly one day and it just kind of got sore? Did he sleep on? I don't know. So what you do, you shut him down. He's missed last week, which should have been 3 practices. He'll miss 3 practices this week, which is not good. Anytime a quarterback misses time, it's not good. And then when it's Richardson, it's really not good because he's still got, so much growth to do. And I don't think we're going to talk to him until training camp. So we're not going to, we're going to go into training camp not knowing. And I think that the way that Shane Steichen talked, that when he comes back in camp, they'll ease him back in. So, over the next 6 weeks, will he not throw at all? Will he throw sparingly? I don't know what the regimen's going to be. We can ask Shane this week. But it's just never good. Like with Peyton, when you're talking about his neck, that's not a good thing. And whenever it's like with a quarterback in neck or your arm, it's just not good. You just have to hope and cross your fingers that this is simply soreness. It's an aggravation. It's inflammation. And when he comes in late July, early August, it'll be fine. And we won't know that until late July or early August.
Mike, one of the things to me that I keep going back to is I remember the famous attached at the hip press conference. Ryan Grigson, Chuck Pagano, they're attached at the hip. We had late night conversation and tears flowed and, whatever. And then, it turned out, obviously, that was not the case. And Chuck Pagano was Ryan Grigson was let go. Pagano stayed. Then Ballard comes in. He's got a lame duck coach, et cetera. Things got murky, okay? I look at this situation now and in the quarterback situation, and I'm going to make a statement, and I want you to then tell me why it's inaccurate, okay? Because you, Mike Chappell, are around this franchise much more closely than am I.
I think I know where you're going to go, but go ahead and go there.
But right now we have a general manager who theoretically needs one of the 2 quarterbacks that are in line to be the starter to pan out. Theoretically, his reputation, or certainly the trust by a lot of people in him, is based upon and predicated on Anthony Richardson working out, because that's who he drafted when it finally came time that the Colts had to have a franchise quarterback. That's who Chris Ballard ultimately was responsible for it, and that's who they selected. On the other hand, you have a head coach in Shane Steichen that his job is to win football games. And he's got Daniel Jones coming in that he may think gives him a better chance of winning football games. So Daniel Jones, if indeed Shane Steichen feels is his best option to win games, Daniel Jones is in the best interest of Shane Steichen. But Daniel Jones would not be in the best interest of Chris Ballard. And therefore, you have, again, at the top, what potentially could be 2 chefs, 1 kitchen. Your thoughts?
They'll go with the best guy. I think and we've talked, it just has to be Richardson for so many reasons, long term. And we look long term. They can't. They have to look at now. They just do. But they're going to go with the best guy. Chris Ballard has said that, and I really believe him. I do, even though, like I said, if it's Jones and they go 10-7 and make the playoffs with Jones, then what do you have? You've got an unsigned quarterback, veteran quarterback, and you've got Richardson, who lost his job. I don't know what Carly Ursay does. I got some ideas what she might do, but they're good. They owe it to the roster. They owe it to Quentin Nelson or Michael Pittman, to Forrest Buckner and Zaire Franklin. They owe it to everybody to go with the quarterback that gives them the best chance.
But if the quarterback that gives them the best chance has the most limited ceiling long term, then do you go that way?
You have to. You have to. I think the time of them looking long term is almost gone.
Right. So now you're stuck in the vat of suck, right?
No, there's no question. And this is a situation that's been created by Richardson's inefficiency, his injuries. If you had put something better than Gardner Minshew, I don't know, a quarterback who gives you 25 touchdowns and 10 interceptions and makes throws.
Derek Carr.
The last couple. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll give you that. Yeah. This team would have a totally different narrative on what the last few years. It's still remarkable to me that in whatever it was, 2021, that Taylor goes for 1,800 yards and 20-some touchdowns, and they miss the playoffs. That's just ridiculous. And they're wasting good years of his. Partly, I mean, last year if he doesn't drop the ball, they make the playoffs. But they've got to go with the quarterback that gives them the best chance, because they owe it to players who may not be here in 2 years, 3 years.
Chap, let me ask you this. Mike Chappell, our guest, Ryan Geist Brewery guest line. You mentioned Carly Ursay, and I want to be very clear that I'm asking this with all due respect to her. I don't know Carly Ursay, I don't. But do you believe that Carly Ursay would allow her decisions to be impacted by what her father would have done or would have wanted? Or is she her own individual who is now going to put her own thumbprint on this franchise, which is her right?
She will do things her way. Her and her daughter or sisters will do things their way. And it in all likelihood will be influenced by their dad, but not directed by their dad. I just go back to so many times that Jim made decisions, good and bad, with a lot of emotion involved, because that's the kind of person he was. And I don't think she's going to, she may say, what would Dad do? But she won't necessarily do what Jim Irsay did, because she's different. She's learned from him. Remember, the greatest learning that Jim Irsay did was from his dad on what not to do. Totally. Now that's not, we're not that extreme at all, because Jim Irsay did tons of really good things, but she and her sisters will do what they believe is best for the team. And I'm talking at the end of the season. And that'll be dictated by whether she thinks this franchise is heading in the right direction with the right people, or whether it needs a course change.
Have we been given any indication, or are there examples yet that would lead us to believe of Carly Ursay's management style or direction? In other words, has she made decisions yet and I hate to say it this way, because rest his soul, and it has not been a long time, but already have we seen some implication or indication as to how she will guide things without Jim Irsay being present?
Yes. And I can't get into specifics. There have been moves that have been made that were made that wouldn't have made. She's made some moves already that to put her stamp on it, I guess. Now, what level that would be, I don't know. But she's made some moves that are certainly post Jim Irsay that would not have been made had he not passed away. So, and that's her right. It's her team. She can do what she damn well pleases. And but again, I think the important thing is for her to have learned the good things from her dad. Stay away from the few not so good things. And she's got to do it her way. She can't be sitting there saying, well, darn, what would Dad do? What would Dad do? No, you can't do that. You just have to be your own person, your own owner. And then if it fails, it fails. But the most important thing and Jim told me this a long time ago, whether it was in his first few years of ownership, is you put people in the right place around you and let them do their jobs. Jim Irsay's, his legacy is going to be on the field, the Super Bowl trophy in South Miami in early 2007. And the primary reason that worked was Bill Polian and then Tony Dungy. So put the right people, and then when it ends, it doesn't end pretty. It didn't end pretty, and going into 2011 was not a good season for a lot of reasons. But you put the right people in place and let them do their jobs, and you only step in or wield your veto power sparingly, and for good reason. If you don't trust your GM, if you don't trust your head coach, then what are you doing? What are you doing? So you've got to get those people around you. And I know there was times that Bill Polian pushed Jim Irsay's tolerance level. I know there was. But it worked on the field until it didn't work, and that was a long run. Normally GMs don't have that kind of a run, whatever it was, 10 and 11 years of really, really good football, elite football. So it's put people around there, head coach, primarily the GM, and then get the quarterback. And if you got that, you got something. But you've got to have the right people around you. That's why I've always thought that one of the more unsung people at the Colts has been Pete Ward. I'm telling you, you got to have a Pete Ward. You just have to know when things need to be done. I mean, organizationally, and when not to. And I hope she leans heavily on Pete, because Pete's really a whiz at what he does. But surround yourself with the right people and let them do their jobs. And I don't want to use the term interfere. It's their business, but let them do their jobs and have your input and be a loud voice when you really think it's necessary. Or then what are you doing with the people around you?
Chap, do you believe that Morocco Brown, who was the chief personal executive and basically, for lack of a better phrase, one of the chief scouts for the Colts, and he was the one that was the most vociferous, the biggest supporter of Anthony Richardson. He has departed ways with the franchise. It comes at the same time that Richardson, we find out, is going to be shelved again temporarily, perhaps because of the shoulder. But do we make an immediate connection to Anthony Richardson still being in limbo at this point, and thus Morocco Brown losing his gig?
Yeah, that's a leap you probably shouldn't make. No, I've been told there were issues, issues recently, complicated to some level, but not because of not Richardson related.
Okay.
I think that would be a leap, and that's why it's when the move coincides with something like this. I understand the jump, but I think you'd be way off base to do that.
Mike Chappell, CBS 4 WXIN, Fox 59. A pleasure as always. We'll talk to you soon. All right.
Looking forward to it. Enjoy Wednesday night. I'm sure you'll have that nice seat you have.
They're not my seats. I just happen to be lucky enough to sit in them. How's that?
Well, it depends on who you know, right?
That is correct. It does
We'll
help.
talk to you.
Appreciate it, Mike Chappell. All right, now the other thing that comes into play, we've talked a lot Pacers, we've talked a lot Colts. The NCAA is based here in Indianapolis, so too is the Horizon League. And there was a huge ruling on Friday about payment of players. And does this mean now financial wild, wild west? I'm a moron when it comes to that, as well as a lot of things. So like Chap said, surround yourself with the right people. We're going to do exactly that. The commissioner of the Horizon League, Julie Relash, will join us next to explain what all of this means and how conferences and schools navigate it on the other side. Rusty Redenbacher, who is a local music DJ, civil leader in many areas, once said that he believes this is the perfect song. Everybody wants to rule the world, and certainly when it comes to college athletics, everybody wants to have a stake. Fans feel that their school is entitled to more. Athletes always felt like they were entitled to more, whether it be financially, benefits, etc. Now the Supreme Court, and then in a House ruling against the NCAA, has ruled. And basically what I said earlier, and I'm the first to admit it, I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, so I don't necessarily understand in totality all of this. But basically, I think what it means is that athletes now are all going to be paid. That's the way I look at it. And then I thought there has to be more nuance than that, and there's got to be somebody more educated on this subject to discuss it than myself. So I felt I owed it to our listeners to have somebody on that can articulate it better than I. And that's what we're going to do now, because joining us on the Rhein Guy Brewery guest line, she is the commissioner of the Horizon League, which is based right here, of course, in Indianapolis. Julie Relash joins the program, a return guest. Julie, it is a pleasure to have you on once again. Can you summarize for me, and I know that the last time we talked to you, you guys had, quote, opted in on this in the event that this ruling was going to happen. That decision came in March, and now this ruling in terms of payment of players. But can you simplify it for me in terms of what actually has unfolded?
Hi, Jake. Good to be on, and I'm going to try. I understand no legalese permitted, so we'll give it our best shot.
Fair enough.
So the House settlement that you referenced, it was officially approved by Judge Wilkin, a federal judge out in California, on Friday, and this has obviously been in the works for months now. I think the preliminary settlement was reviewed by her last fall, and she gave the parties some homework because there were aspects of it she didn't like. So those parts of the settlement were changed. She took another bite at the apple in April when she held a hearing on championship day, and then here we find ourselves today where she signed off. So what does this mean? It means that, in a nutshell, schools, meaning Division I schools, can give direct payments to student athletes, but there's a huge caveat here. The payments have to be in the form of a name, image, or likeness, or NIL, or NIL, as most people refer to it. But it's got to come in the form of an NIL payment. And there's some other limits and restrictions to it, but I can pause there if you want to just talk about what is an NIL payment, what is it not, how is this this is not supposed to be pay for play. Of course, that's what a lot of people think it is, but the intent here is for schools directly to pay student athletes for using their name, image, likeness.
Okay, so a couple of things here that I want to clarify first, okay, Julie? And again, but you know this because you and I know each other. I ain't the sharpest tool, right? So some of this you're going to think to yourself, well, this seems elementary, but I'm a moron. Yeah, see, I'm a moron. Exactly. Thank you.
You're not. I'm not going along with that, but
okay.
But I do live in the tool shed, so to speak, of college sports, so I'll try to help.
Okay, so here we go. We'll begin with this. This, true or false, this ruling is just Division I area. So in other words, a Division II or Division III school is not impacted by this ruling. True?
Correct.
Okay,
True.
so Division I schools. Secondly, for those Division I institutions, this ruling is applicable for any sport, correct? So in other words, this is not just the quote-unquote revenue sports. This is all sports. An athlete, whether they are a track and field athlete or a rowing athlete or a basketball athlete, they are all now impacted by the ruling that is universal for athletes so long as they're at a Division I school, correct?
They could be impacted. It's really going to be up to the school whether which athletes they want to pay and how much. Not every athlete is going to get NIL money. Even at Big Ten schools, not every athlete is going to get Big Ten money.
Okay.
It's not going to get NIL money.
Well, so here's – let me ask you if I'm understanding this correctly. And I'm going to use an analogy here for people to make it relatable, okay, or easier to understand. In my line of work, Julie, in radio, I have a base salary that I get paid by the radio station to perform every day. In addition to that, occasionally I will do advertisements for, a company, and that is an auxiliary part of my income. That's additional income that I get that comes each month as an additional income where people are paying me to represent their brand, okay? It sounds to me like what we're getting at here is this ruling indicates that you can, in fact, have players compensated at the Division I level, but it's not going to be that they are getting a uniform base salary. It's going to be that they now have the licensing for the school to facilitate that auxiliary income, or in this case it would be primary, but the revenue that generates from the likeness of their brand versus another player to represent different companies and revenue in that area. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair analogy. And I think obviously that what schools will continue to do for the most part, we certainly hope, is to give scholarships to student athletes. And you're going to see some schools able to give even more scholarships than they did in the past. But that I think in your analogy, that would be like your base pay, right? The
Gotcha.
scholarship.
Okay. Yep.
And then beyond that, when there are star players like you are for radio.
Yeah. No, now we're really stretching, but yes.
Yeah. They can. Those star players or impact players, the schools can choose, and they're going to give the NIL compensation. Now,
Gotcha.
It's supposed to be, and I'm saying it's supposed to be because it's got to be an agreement. And like in the Horizon League, we've worked with all of our general counsels across all 11 universities and drafted a template agreement that our schools can use for those student athletes that they want to give some NIL money to. Now, do they need to do it to be competitive? Yes. Why? Because obviously now this is an open door for these high-profile Division I programs across the country, and they know to get top talent, that base scholarship, if you will, is not going to be enough to recruit and retain them.
So 3 years ago, Julie, let's say that I have a university, okay, we're going to call it Query University, okay? So at my university, I've got a big football, or we'll use basketball. I've got a big basketball program, okay? If I'm recruiting a kid, 3 years ago, what I said to them was, hey, if you come to Query University, you're going to get a great education, and because we're a good basketball program, I'm pretty confident that you're going to be able to go out and different restaurants and shoe companies are going to want to pay you because you're a player for Query University, and that's the advantage I give you as the platform of that. Now, what Query University can say is, hey, if you come here, not only am I going to give you a scholarship, I can directly go out and get those companies on board, and instead of you having to do it on your own, I can do it for you, and you're going to get this amount of money per year from these companies. Is that a safe way of saying it?
Yeah, that can happen. And what was happening 3 years ago in your example, most people have heard the word collective, right? Those are the third-party entities that were set up to facilitate that payment. Now, I think we're still going to see some collectives happening, and we can get to that in a second. But the example you said is schools can now directly give the money. Now, they can go out and ask the restaurant or the car dealer to hire the student athlete and make that deal happen, or the school can pay them directly, which is what's going to happen. And that's why this is called revenue share.
Okay.
Because they can then choose how do they want to use the student athlete's name, image, likeness to sell tickets for games, to promote the university and put their picture on the billboard around town or in the region. So put them on Times Square like we've seen in some other instances. But the point is the schools can figure out how do they want to use that student athlete's name, image, likeness, and pay them for it. The schools have an all-in ceiling that will include scholarship money as well as NIL money of $20.5 million.
Are there conferences? I know that you said you opted in March for the Horizon League, right? Meaning you wanted to be part of the way that this was going to work, right?
Correct.
Were there conferences that declined that? And if they did, are they now left out in the cold?
Well, first of all, it was each Division I school had to make a choice, except for the power conferences, because since they were defendants, they automatically had to opt in. That was part of the deal. But for the remaining 28, really 27 conferences, if we're counting the Pac-12 as part of the Power 5, so the remaining 27 Division I conferences, each member school had to walk up to this and say, are we going to opt in or not? What we did as a Horizon League is obviously started talking about this a year ago, and we talked about the pros and the cons of opting in versus not. And I strongly urged our members to do that last fall, and our presidents, our chancellors, our athletics directors, our basketball coaches all understood why that was important. And then I also thought we needed to do whatever we did needed to be unified, and they agreed with that. And so it took some time because obviously this was a big decision, but they all got there in February, and then we did the announcement in March with our basketball championship. There are some conferences that are divided. They have some schools in, some schools not. And then there are some conferences like the Ivy League, not a big surprise, that did not opt in.
Now, lastly, Julie, for all of this, Julie Relash is our guest, the commissioner of the Horizon League on the Rhine Geist Brewery guest line. We're talking about the NCAA ruling. I guess two-part question. The first is this ruling final, or is this something – because I know the Supreme Court, and when I hear Supreme Court, I think, well, that's supreme. But I guess they had kind of kicked this down, if you will, to another court and said, you guys settle this out. Is this now an official ruling, or can this go back into appeals and that kind of thing?
So this is a settlement, as
okay.
opposed to it going to trial.
Gotcha. Okay.
The Supreme Court ruling you're thinking of was Alston, and that was for additional educational benefits, like the just under $6,000 that student athletes could get about 5 years ago now.
Okay.
But in that Supreme Court case, the Supreme Court very much opened the door, in their opinion, for more benefits to student athletes, which signaled this settlement to come to where it is, because there's so many cases that the NCAA and frankly a lot of us in Division I are battling. Well, this House settlement actually wrapped up 3 of those cases, which is a good thing because now it's brought closure to 3 major class actions out there. Because the parties agreed, meaning all the defendants and the plaintiffs, this isn't something that's not going to get appealed. So this is final.
Okay, now, other question is, does this, in your opinion, Julie, for the smaller conferences, does this even the playing field, or does this allow the rich to get even richer and allow the further separation now between the big boys and the little boys and girls?
I don't think it evens the playing field. I think it definitely makes it more difficult for the strong mid-majors like the Horizon League and others to continue to compete. We're going to, like, I know you know it, like this year, Wright State, our baseball champion, beat the number 1 team in the country in the NCAA postseason and sent Vandy home. That hadn't happened ever. A little bit like Oakland beating Kentucky, but that had happened before. But the point is, we've won 40 out of 45 years in the NCAA postseason as a league, as have some other strong mid-majors. So we're going to continue to compete. But to answer your question, it's going to be harder because what I think is going to happen is some of these Power 5 conferences will really start to stockpile, and they will be paying student athletes to come, and they're going to be offering them more money, obviously, than what we can at our level. And even if they don't get a lot of playing time, they're still going to be sitting on their roster instead of having the chance to really play and make a name for themselves at one of our schools. I do think at the end of the day, people want to play, so we're going to continue to have people transferring both ways. The transfer portal is a two-way portal. That's a good thing because we've continued to generally have net gains through the transfer portal. But it's going to put some pressure on, because the other piece we haven't talked about is, in addition to this $20.5 million cap, the collectives are still going to be out there. And there's just an article today about likely for quarterbacks, they're going to have to tap into major collective money just when you see what is being paid to some of these quarterbacks at the Power 5 level. That would eat up too much of that $20.5 million cap, right? The good news is they're supposed to be, and I say that because it's part of the settlement, but this a new enforcement mechanism to actually approve the third-party deals, not the NIL deals from the schools, but the money coming from these third-party collectives, like to the quarterbacks in my example. And allegedly, they have the ability to turn down some of these outrageous deals, because obviously, even if you're a top Power 5 quarterback, you're still not worth $7 million. So that's got to have some level of, I'm not going to say level the playing field, but some sanity brought to that whole process, because currently there's none.
So there is an element of a salary cap, if you will, right?
Well, at least, and they're not going to call it that, and it's not even a fair market value, but it's reasonable. I think they're even calling it reasonable compensation.
Right.
So if you're going to pay the quarterback in Miami $5 million, for what? how is his name, image, likeness worth that? What is it that he's going to do to earn that $5 million? And how can you demonstrate that his persona and endorsing of a product or showing up for appearances garners anywhere near that current level of compensation? And I'm not saying that the Miami quarterback, I'm just giving an example that, has been some hyperbole in the news.
Julie, when I become president, which is never going to happen, but when I do, Oakland beating Kentucky, the celebration of that is going to be a national holiday, just so you know.
Okay.
Every year in March.
I'll be there to help you sign that executive
that's
order.
Right. Every year in March, that's what we're going to do, and we're going to celebrate the Kentucky got beat by the Horizon League in the NCAA tournament. All right, Julie, listen, I know it's complicated stuff, but I appreciate the explanation of it because this is obviously a major, major story, and it comes amongst major stories here in the city. But I knew you'd be the perfect person to explain all of it, and I certainly appreciate the time. And we are always a fan of having the Horizon League right here in town, so I appreciate the time today.
I appreciate it. Go Pacers, go Fever.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Right. Speaking of Pacers and Fever, we've had plenty of discussion on both of those today. Matter of fact, Jeff Foster going to join us just about 15 minutes from now. But the other big team in town, the Indianapolis Colts, major news and explanation and clarity about the direction of leadership of the franchise. Just came out. We'll tell you next. So we now have clarification in terms of the ownership of the Indianapolis Colts. The announced transition of ownership from the Colts clarifies it as following. Now, keep in mind that all three of Jim Irsay's daughters, that would be Carly Irsay Gordon, Casey Irsay Foyt, and Kaylin Irsay Jackson, all three of those women have been listed in ownership situations for a while now. But the clarification now upon the passing of Jim Irsay is as follows. Carly Irsay Gordon will now be the principal owner and CEO of the Indianapolis Colts. What that means is that she will have the ultimate say as the CEO and principal owner. However, her sisters do share ownership. Casey Foyt will be owner and executive vice president, while Kaylin Jackson will be owner and chief brand officer. The one thing that we will likely never know the answer to, but, and again, I want to be clear that I'm saying this strictly respectfully, but at the same time, just down the line. I'm not opining either way on it, but factually speaking. And I'll even remove the Colts from the equation in saying it this way. One of the challenges that we have seen in the National Football League primarily with change of ownership in the last, let's say, decade or so, is that the National Football League has now become such a huge business empire. Not that it always hasn't been, but it has become such a big empire that many of the ownership groups of the National Football League own franchises whose value is astronomically higher than that under which they originally paid as part of their ownership, which is fabulous. That's great for people in the football business. That's great news. The only area where that's challenging news is the following. At the federal level, an estate tax upon a transfer of ownership, there is a tax that needs to be paid that is determined in terms of the amount based on the valuation of the team. In other words, what it is determined that the franchise is worth. And oftentimes, if the valuation of the franchise is such that that means that there is a very large inheritance tax that is owed to Uncle Sam, for a lot of franchises, suddenly the inheriting family or the inheriting ownership group says, wait a minute, the valuation of this franchise is markedly higher than what we initially paid for it and what we're bringing in for it. So that valuation is the valuation of what the franchise is worth if we were to sell it. And now all of a sudden I owe a large percentage of that in federal taxes. If that money is not liquidly available to ownership groups, then what you have seen with other franchises is that then the more economical option is to sell the franchise because of the challenge in paying that Uncle Sam obligation. I'm not speaking of the Indianapolis Colts directly. I'm saying this is the precedent with other franchises. The other thing now with it that you see is that with ownership change, NFL franchises have become so valuable, $3 to $4 to $5 to $6 billion in a sale price, that it is very rare to find a single buyer that has that kind of money, certainly that has that kind of immediately accessible money. And so these franchises now, the Denver Broncos come to mind, it's more common that you see ownership groups that are collections of individuals from different cities that are not indigenous to the city where the franchise is that buy in. That's what happened with the Denver Broncos. that is something that I think will be interesting to watch. It does appear as though there very clearly was already a transitional process in place, not only with the three daughters being listed as owners of the franchise going back a couple of years, but also very clearly with the rapidity with which this transition team, in terms of title and role, was announced and defined, would lead you to believe that all of those ducks were already in a row. And we may never know whether or not they were all in a row, but if they were not, in terms of the financial obligations thereof, it is certainly something that we will learn. Jeff Foster joining us, other side. Pacers, Thunder, 1-1. Best of 5 now. Pacers have home court advantage. Jeff Foster's one of those that I think will be at Game 3. He joins us next. I have two great trivia questions about our next guest, Eddie. You ready? The
I'm
first
always
is not necessarily trivia questions, just trivial little tidbits.
Okay.
The first, if I'm not mistaken.
Are we talking rain droppings?
Yes. This individual is the fourth all-time leading rebounder in Pacers history. And if I'm not mistaken, he once said that he became a prolific rebounder because when he was a kid, his dad would pay him per rebound. He'd be like, okay, you got a game, like $5 per rebound, and he'd go out and get rebounds and then come back and, cleaned his dad out. And then secondly, can you tell me the player that this Pacer was acquired for on a draft day trade? The Pacers drafted a different player and then traded that player for this individual. I know that answer?
No.
All right, we'll see if he knows. Jeff Foster joins us on the program. He is on the Rhinegeist Brewery guest line. He is fourth all-time in the franchise history, not only in rebounds, but in games played as well, in a career that went from 1999 to 2012, and I believe we'll be coming back for game number 3, maybe game number 4 as well for the Pacers. Jeff, welcome to the program. How are you?
Gentlemen, I'm great. Thanks for having me on. And wow, what some interesting intros. I haven't heard those things in quite some time.
Okay, so first off, fact or fiction? Your dad used to pay you per rebound, and that's how you became a glass cleaner.
There is quite the algorithm behind that, but yes, he did in elementary school. Excuse me. In high school, I guess I wasn't being aggressive enough, and it was $1 per rebound up to 10. Add $2 to 15. And $5 anything over 15.
Wow,
so, I didn't have an allowance, but that became quite the moneymaker for me.
Okay. Secondly, on draft night of, I guess it would have been 99, you were acquired by the Pacers in a trade for what player that the Pacers had drafted?
If this is going to me, I know the answer. Not many people would. It was Vonteego Cummings.
That is correct, Vonteego Cummings. Yes. All right. Speaking of that, you are coming to game number 3. Is that correct?
I am. It'll be the first home game I've been to in quite some time. I took my son to Game 7 in the Garden last year. Told him not to wear anything Pacer-wise, but we kind of snuck in there and then snuck out with the W. So that was a lot of fun.
Hey, let's go to this because obviously I know Jeff Foster. You've been watching it, I assume, and so you're aware of what's going on. As somebody who played and maybe has a different eye in watching the game than those of us who simply opine on a microphone, what stood out to you in game number 2 that maybe we wouldn't notice as something that Indiana either did better and didn't get enough credit for that was a good sign, or that is something clearly they need to clean up before game 3?
I do not watch ESPN and listen to radio shows all day, but what I noticed was Tyrese was not aggressive until the second half, and Oklahoma City's depth as we got into our bench a little bit further and a little bit longer started to kind of show that they may be a little bit deeper than the Pacers.
Yeah, so that's interesting because that's been the Pacers' calling card, right, is their depth. But one thing that I noticed, Jeff, is that Oklahoma City, regardless of who they have out there, their defensive mentality does not drop. I've likened it to I keep calling their defense like a car wash. I mean, like you go down the lane and it's like going through a car. There's just stuff coming in from every direction. How much of that is, I guess, taught with that roster, and how much as a guy yourself that kind of had that mentality, how much of that style of defense is just strictly a contagious mentality?
It is definitely that. And the one thing I've noticed is they're definitely allowing the Oklahoma City defenders to, I would say, use their hands a little bit more and encroach on the ball a lot more than you would have seen during the regular season. And I think that's to be expected during the playoffs and especially during the finals. But I think, there's definitely not a lot of calls going the Pacers' way in that regard. And I think they're also able to do it just because, like I said a moment ago, their depth allows them, if they do get into foul trouble, to bring another guard, and mainly the guards and small forwards off the bench to continue to harass and bring the same pressure as you just mentioned.
When you look at the Pacers offense, and let's begin with Halliburton. Jeff, I think there are a lot of people with Tyrese Halliburton that obviously he is a tremendous talent, and we're seeing that. And what he's done in this postseason is just remarkable. But at the same time, do you liken it to, is it the way he's being defended that we see him so passive for the first 3 quarters yesterday? Or is he erring in terms of trying to get other people too involved before finally he involves himself?
I would say it's the second, and I think you saw in the second half it looked like Rick must have said something at halftime or in the third quarter, because he definitely was looking for his shot a lot more. And let's be honest, game one was unbelievable, great ending, but in true Pacer fashion, this playoff series they were down 15-20 again, and found themselves in the same hole. And I just don't think the same scenario that they've been fortunate to get out of every single round is going to play out in this round unless they kind of come out in the first quarter like they did the first 6 minutes and they're aggressive. And then Tyrese just has to be aggressive, and he has to score 25, 30 points plus these next however many games there are left for the Pacers to have a chance to win this thing.
Jeff Foster's our guest, Ryan Geist Brewery guest line, 13-year NBA career, all spent with the Indiana Pacers. During that run, Jeff, you obviously were a part of teams that went to the finals, made deep runs. How is it different? I mean, from a player's standpoint, fans get so caught up in it, right? And the nerves are high, and everybody all day long, people are waiting for the game. As a player, how is it different than the regular season when you get this far in and you've played that many games? How do you control the emotion?
I think at this point, you know what you're doing, right? You know your teammates, the adjustments you're going to make game in and game out, and I think right, like what you saw, Oklahoma City took away the corner threes in game two. I'm sure there'll be more adjustments from both teams in game three. You know what you're running. Every team knows what the other team's running. It's just a matter of executing. And again, like I said, the Pacers are fortunate in game one with as many turnovers as they had to win the game, and did a little bit better of a job than last game, but obviously there's still room for improvement there, and just coming out, playing with the same intensity that you have all year. And I mean, look, there's two teams left playing for the biggest prize there is in professional basketball, and only one can win it, and you got to execute at almost near perfection.
Which player on this Pacers roster would you most, Jeff Foster, have enjoyed playing with?
Probably Siakam. I think Siakam's just one of those guys, doesn't talk a lot. He just lets his game do the talking for him, and aggressive and just long and can play multiple positions.
See, I thought I listen, he's a great player. I mean, there's no doubt he's been a remarkable player for them, and he's been worth everything that they invested in him to acquire him and then retain him. But I thought in game two, we talk about Halliburton, but I thought Siakam was off as well, and I thought he wasn't as aggressive in getting to the basket as he typically needs to be, or even using his, that fall away that he has, which is very good. I think he was 3 of 11 from the floor. Am I being too critical of Siakam from yesterday?
I mean, I think I'd have to go back and look at the box score. I remember looking at it in the first quarter because I was happy with the way they came out. It reminded me a little bit of the game two in New York. I just expected after game one in New York for them to get blown out or be down again 20 early. And they came out and had a lot of consistency and fire and fight. And the beginning of the game was that way. But then Oklahoma City, as their bench came in, and again, like we said a minute ago, the calling card of the Pacers has been to match the other team's bench and intensity. Just kind of got out of hand a little bit quicker. But I thought Siakam had a pretty good first quarter. After that, I think everybody just was kind of, Oklahoma City just kind of punched everybody in the face, and the game plan. They just weren't able to come back from the 15, 16, 20 points that they've been down every game. And hopefully Siakam and Halliburton and Miles, they all are get the adjustments from Coach Carlisle, and they come out and get the field house fired up on Wednesday.
Is there an advantage by the time you get this far into the year where to not think about the previous game, good or bad, right? I mean, in other words, how do you, as an NBA player, when you have a game like that where the other team is in control for the vast majority of the game, how do you not allow yourself in game three to have a PTSD about that?
I don't. Again, right, this Pacer team is something that I don't think any of us have ever seen. I think they showed the odds last night during the finals that it's essentially like winning 2 Powerballs. The odds of coming back and accomplishing what they've been able to accomplish. So I don't think with what these guys have gone through this playoffs and even last year, that anything's going to phase them. Obviously, Oklahoma City is a different beast. If you look at the record and what they've done this year, they're one of the best teams in the history of the NBA. So to beat that level of quality, you're going to make your adjustments, and you're going to come out and continue to play your game, and hopefully your game is better than theirs.
By the way, when I think about you, Jeff Foster, our guest, Ryan Geist Brewery guest line. So you were born and raised in San Antonio, right? And you spent really your whole life in Texas before coming to Indiana. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So I'd like to think now that, not unlike George Hill, that in retirement that you wear a cowboy hat probably 17 days a month. I don't know about horses, but I'm thinking that you live on a ranch and you got animals all over the place.
I do not, and unlike George from Indianapolis, who I do know lives on a ranch, and he probably has horses and rides them all day. I live in Austin, Texas. I do not ride horses. Mel Daniels, rest in peace, would be very disappointed in me. Love Uncle Mel. But no, obviously that's a stereotype, and I love my time in Indiana. Ironically, ironic or not, both my parents are from Iowa. They met at Iowa State. So they moved to Texas to go to graduate school, and they never left. So I was an Iowan in the Midwest multiple times a year my entire childhood. And obviously when Jamal Tinsley came from Iowa State, I was super excited. And obviously the Indianapolis has two, a Hawkeye and a Cyclone representing the NBA and the WNBA at the highest level now. So it's pretty exciting.
Okay, so when you were a kid, did you have to go back to Iowa for like grandparents and family and that kind of thing?
All multiple times zero.
Okay,
Yes.
did you ever eat it? Now, I'm so proud of this because I love this place, and then I mentioned it to Iowans, and they're either totally on board or they have no idea what I'm talking about. You ever eaten it made right?
I have not. My dad was from Des Moines, so we typically fly in Des Moines, and then my mom was from southeast Iowa, the border of Iowa and Missouri. So pretty sparse population. I don't even, is that in Des Moines somewhere, or where is it at?
So this is killing me here. So made rights are, it's a loose meat sandwich. It's like a little, they're I don't know, there's probably 20 of them throughout the state of Iowa. It's like their Steak and Shake, if you will. But even like, I mean, it's fabulous. It's fantastic. But you could eat it like once a month, and then it's like White Castle. Then you're like, I'm not eating that again for a month, and then you crave it again.
The first time I ever had White Castle was in Indianapolis before my first workout with Rick Smith and Rick Carlisle in September. And my buddies, we drove up, and we got a 40-pack, and I'm like, I'm going to eat 24 of these. I tell you what, I don't know if I've ever eaten it again.
Hold on.
And that workout was a little tough.
You ate 24 White Castle before working out with Rick Smits, and who else was there?
Rick Carlisle was putting the workout on. It was John Tabak, Rick Carlisle, and me. It was the night before, granted.
Had you already been drafted?
The next day.
Had you already been drafted?
Yes, it was in mid-September before training camp.
Okay, I'm going to tell you the one thing, speaking of late-night food places, that I remember. I'm not pretending that I'm not expecting you to remember this, and even if you don't, just play along and act like you do, okay? True story, and you can myth bust this if you'd like. I was working at Channel 6 when the Pacers went to the finals in 2000, okay? If I'm not mistaken, when they went to the finals in 2000, you were a rookie on the roster, and I mean this with all due respect. I want to say you were not activated for the finals. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So the first round of that playoffs, they were playing in Milwaukee. I think that's right. And so I go into a restaurant in Milwaukee at like 11:30 at night. It was like a late night hot dog stand. It was the only place that was open near the hotel. And I walk in, and you were sitting there to get hot dogs to go or to get food to go. And I said to you, wait a minute, don't you guys have like some sort of a curfew or bed check? And you said to me, and I quote, do you think they'll notice if I'm gone? I remember this like it was yesterday. Fact or fiction? Go ahead, myth bust it for me.
I not available.
I remember like it was yesterday. I'm telling you, I absolutely remember it.
You'll love this. Hold on, I'll give you another story from that series, and Rick would probably kill me for telling this. Rick Carlisle took me bowling before one of those games in Milwaukee, and Rick was on a super bowling kick at that time, to where he was trying to become an expert bowler, and that I do remember because I wasn't playing.
Well, so one thing about Rick Carlisle, Jeff Foster, our guest, that I find fascinating, and I don't know Rick Carlisle well, but I do know this, and that is that Rick Carlisle will take up interests and then kind of obsess on that interest to where, whether it's music, whether it is woodworking, whether it's bowling, he will take on something, and then once he gets a keen interest in it, he doesn't stop it until he kind of learns every facet of it and becomes the best version of it that he can be. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. And if you want me to talk for a couple minutes about Rick, I'm more than happy to. I mean, I've known Rick since college, and that's one of the reasons I ended up in Indiana. And obviously, Isaiah Thomas was the Hall of Famer. It was a great time as a coach. But when Rick came back and we were able to win those 61 games, and then when he left again, it was heartbreaking for me. Super excited to see him win a championship with the Mavericks. But then when he came back several years ago, it's one of the best things that's happened to Indiana in a long time.
Yeah, so what about him makes him different? I mean, obviously he is an elite-level coach, but give me your perspective or observation on what makes Rick Carlisle the longevity, the greatness that he has.
His passion and his knowledge for the game and just his ability to adapt is, I mean, it's elite. It's obviously elite. We're seeing that right now. Other teams have seen it before. I mean, obviously people could say that it's from 2000 to 2003, 4, he built that Detroit team that ended up beating us 2 years in a row and going to the championship, winning a championship. And then, he had us on a great trajectory before, things out of his control happened. So obviously, I mean, honestly, the best teams I've ever been a part of, even better than our finals team back in 99, 2000. And then when him going to Dallas, he was able to do great things there. And I think we're seeing the same thing here. He's just a student of the game, a student of, as you just mentioned, a student of everything that he puts his mind to. He's able to excel at and do great things.
You know, one of the things that impressed me, Jeff, and you were a part of this, was it's very rare for franchises to be able to seamlessly transition from one era to the next. And I thought this franchise, in transitioning from the Reggie Miller, Rick Smits, Davis brothers era into the younger era of Jermaine, Ron Artest, that group Steven Jackson brought in. And yes, the brawl derailed that, and we know that. But to be able to without really a hiccup, transition from one era to the next and continue with the same level of excellence is very rare. And you were kind of a part of bridging all of that. Were you able to be aware of it while it was happening, or can you now look back at it and say, that was pretty special?
You know what? It definitely was pretty special. And I think the Pacers are very unique. I mean, the ABA guys were around. They were around up until I left, and sadly, until a lot of them have passed away. And I think just to have those guys and the passion that they passed along for, hey, we won multiple championships here. The city loves you guys because of what we were able to introduce to them. And then coming up under Reggie and that 99-2000 finals team. And then, as you just mentioned, when Jermaine, Ron, Jonathan Bender, Al Harrington, Austin Crozier, all the young guys were around. Reggie was still there, and he was just such a great mentor. And he said something the other day on a podcast, probably it was a month and a half ago, about how he treated us every day in practice. How every day in practice was, he was talking SHIT and giving his all every day, because if we couldn't handle it from him in practice, we weren't going to be able to handle it in Madison Square Garden in Philly or other places. And Reggie passed that mentality along. And then, as Ford mentioned, some of the things out of our control happened, and other things happened, and guys got traded and kind of went by the wayside. I was around with Danny Granger and some other people, as Paul George came in, Roy Hibbert, Lance, and other guys, and we were kind of able to pass what we learned from the ABA guys and Reggie along to the next generation, and it's kind of just been handed down from one group to another, and it's just been fun to watch these guys excel and do great things last year and this year.
That podcast, by the way, Jeff Foster, our guest on the Rhinegeist Brewery guest line, Steven Jackson apologized to Reggie Miller for not only the brawl, but more so for not winning him a championship, and for when that team was so close. You were there for all of that. Do you concur with that sentiment from Jackson of a feeling of, I'll say, guilt for lack of a better one, of not getting that for Reggie Miller and for the franchise?
I really don't talk a lot. I've never talked about the Detroit deal. I understand where Steven's coming from. I think we all knew how good we were that year. We can go back. I had I had a hip surgery before during preseason that now you miss a year and a half, and I played in the game a month later. I essentially played the rest of my career on one leg. Had the same surgery again after that season. I wouldn't say obviously Reggie, and knowing it was his last year, was a huge factor in it. We also were really, really good. We were really good. And, knowing what Reggie meant to the city of Indianapolis, to the state of Indiana, and what he meant to us as a team, we really, it was definitely part of our thought process going into the season. And again, right, things happen that are out of everybody's control, to a certain point. And, the championship, and the city of Indianapolis wasn't able to get a potential championship, but hey, we're knocking on the door again, and who knows what happens over the next week and a half, but hopefully we get there.
I want to get to one other thing that Austin Crozier said about you in just a second, but before we do it real quick, Jeff, do you not talk about the brawl because it's too painful, or just because you feel like everything that needed to be said was said?
I think, look, right, it happened, and different sides of the story have been told over the last couple of years, and again, right, we were really good. Everybody that was part of that team that saw those practices, we had a lot of injuries when that moment happened. And we never really got to kind of see the entire potential of that team out on the court, but we got to see it in preseason and training camp. And I've never been a part of something like that. And it's just unfortunate that the world didn't get the opportunity to see it.
All right, Jeff, we had Austin Crozier on, early May, a couple weeks ago after one of the Knicks games. And he had mentioned that his dog he had to pick his dog up from the vet. So we were trying to guess the breed of dog of Austin Crozier, okay? And in doing so, he gave us a glimpse into the life of the non-ranching Jeff Foster. All right, now I want you to listen to what Austin Crozier had to say, and then you can reply here to Austin Crozier. Here we go. This was from May 7th. I could see Austin Crozier being one of these, like Paris Hilton, that has the little dog in a bag type thing on Rodeo Drive. Very bougie, right?
That's Jeff Foster. Jeff has a little dog like that, and he carries it around on his shoulder, and it's very lovely.
Okay, Jeff Foster, the floor is yours. True or false?
Okay, when we moved to from Indianapolis back to Austin, my daughter had a goldfish that she had won at the state fair that you think's going to die in like 2 weeks. Well, the goldfish ended up being like 2 pounds and like 8 inches by 3 inches. It was monstrous.
Okay.
Right. I think consulted with someone. They're like, that fish will not survive the transit. So I had to promise her something, and she said she wanted a dog, and I let her pick the dog. So she was 7 years old. We have the cutest 5-pound Maltese, just like Paris Hilton does. So Callie is, 11, 12 years old now, and it is a big part of our family. But we did Reggie. We do have the Paris Hilton dog, but we did also have Reggie. I don't know if you guys know this. Reggie had a trained German Shepherd. So we had a couple of those trained German Shepherds when I played, and this dog's much easier to take care of than those. I'll say that.
Now, I want to know what happened to the goldfish. I'm a little worried about the goldfish.
I don't think the goldfish is with us anymore. I'm not sure what toilet it was flushed down in Indiana after we moved, 12, 13 years ago, but it was given to a family friend. And
okay, so the goldfish, you didn't just flush the goldfish because you were moving. No. Someone else took care of the goldfish, and it ran its proper life, right?
I don't know how long it lived, but again, right, that $2 goldfish from the state fair turned into a trip to PetSmart or Petco or whatever you want to call, and an $80 fish tank and gravel and all that good stuff that comes along with it. But
That's
the fish
beautiful.
was definally passed on.
Do we have a name for the goldfish?
Put in charge of it.
Did the goldfish have a name?
It was Goldie. It was Goldie.
Well, it's A for originality. Okay.
No, it was my daughter named it, and you'll love this. We were at one of those mentalist things, like probably 8 years ago here in Austin, and literally the guy in front of a room of 5,000 people. And again, right, it could have been. This was probably a little bit more straightforward than the New York Jets things, where you see people calling out the random numbers. And the mentalist said, "Is there an 8-year-old in here, sitting right in here?" And my daughter stood up. "Did you have a goldfish named Goldie?" And she was just like, Oh my
Come on.
gosh! So
Come on.
yeah. But obviously, Goldie's not that unique, and I'm glad Crow's throwing me under the bus like that.
So what's
I'll
your
make sure I mention that to him when I see him.
what's the Maltese's name?
Callie.
Okay, I thought maybe it was Malty.
Like
you know,
no, Callie, like California, like Snoop and Dr. Dre. Callie.
well, like Austin
California.
Crocer, right? For that matter, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right. Well, Jeff Foster, you will be here games 3 and 4, or just game 3?
Both of them.
Both of them. All right.
Super excited to get back in there, and hopefully they got a shirt that fits me. And just excited to cheer on the blue and gold.
The gold shirts are out. They say this is Indiana, and the best news of all, Jeff Foster, as you know, is it is all walking distance to the White Castle just south of Gainbridge Fieldhouse. We'll have a 40-pack waiting for you.
I'll be sitting in the corner with some hot dogs waiting for you.
There you go. Jeff, I appreciate it, man. Safe travels, all right?
Yeah, thank you so much. Have a good one.
All right, Jeff Foster joining us again, the 4th all-time leader in games played for your Indiana Pacers. Talked earlier about the changes to the NCAA and the compensation of athletes. Luke Basso is the athletic director at IU Indy, and he's looking for a new head coach. We're going to tackle both of those topics with him next. In Slip, I said that our next guest was looking for a basketball coach. That's not the case. He found one, as a matter of fact, a guy that's won 85% of his games at the Division II level. Ben Howlett is the new head basketball coach for IU Indy. The guy that conducted that search and made that decision joins us now in the program. He is a return guest to the Rhinegeist Brewery guest line. Luke Basso is the athletic director for the Jaguars of IU Indy. And, Luke, I want to talk to you about this. We talked earlier with the commissioner of your league, Julie Relash from the Horizon League, about the ruling now in regards to NIL and payment of players, and a lot of it's above my intellectual capability. But let's begin by congratulating you on completing your search and getting a coach that, you know, when you look recently in basketball, there is a blueprint for taking somebody that has won at a high level, even if it's at a lower level of the game itself, and bringing it to the Division I level. What about Ben Howlett most impressed you?
Yeah, hey Jake, good to join you. You know, I think there's a few things. One, I mean, the guy's been a Division II head coach for 8 years, and 5 of the 8 years led the country in scoring. The other 3 years in the top 5. He's the type of guy, can't tell you how many 30-win seasons he's had, but can tell you his worst year was 27 wins. And, you know, two other things is offense and defense, something that we truly love here, and I think everybody in Indiana will love. And then he had a lot of former players who reached out in support of him as a coach. And I think we looked at what they were saying on top of the ability to play at the high level of Division II, and really knew we were getting a great person on the court and off the court, and excited to have him join us, excited to hopefully keep up the 85% win streak, and excited for everyone to see his offense defense, which is called the system, here in downtown Indianapolis.
He has twice had 30-win seasons in his time at West Liberty. More importantly, he has never had more than, this is incredible, never had more than 7 losses in a season, which is pretty remarkable. Luke, one of the things that for IU Indy Athletics that he will obviously now be navigating is this settlement. I say ruling, it's more a settlement. The House settlement with the NCAA in terms of schools being able to directly facilitate NIL deals for student athletes. How does this affect IU Indy, and what specifically and in an elementary level does it mean?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, it provides more clarity, right? We've been hearing about this settlement. You know, I think I saw a tweet the other day. It's been almost 5 or 6 years since the lawsuit was filed. So, you know, we've been living in this gray area for college athletics for some time, me in the last 2 years. So provide some clarity. I think everybody was already shifting towards playing towards these rules over the last 6-7 months, knowing this was coming down the pike. But for us, I think the first thing it does, it says that everybody in the league is going to play by the same rules, right? You know, there's, I think a lot of us will still keep it collective, but there's going to be more transparency when it comes to NIL. You know, as you can imagine, Jake, coaches and players sometimes inflate, you know, how much money they're getting or what their colleagues are getting into other schools. So this will provide some transparency that I know the commissioner spoke about earlier. And also, I think from a league standpoint and from an IU Indy standpoint specifically, we're going to be able to become really innovative on the ideas that we're going to use to help monetize the NIL for our student athletes, and also give our student athletes a chance to become entrepreneurs, something that's been lacking at the Division I level for some time.
When you look, Luke, at this, from the outside perspective, I think, okay, what this means is now that each school, if they're creative enough, has the means now and the legality, the sign-off to go out and utilize additional income to recruit players to the school. And I think to myself, on one hand, like on one shoulder, the little angel is saying to me, perfect, equal playing field for everybody regardless of school size. Then the devil on the other shoulder is saying to me, the rich are going to get much, much richer because they've got more money, and the smaller schools are going to be that much more left in the cold. Which is reality? Yeah,
I mean, I think the reality is the system that we've been playing by for a long time hasn't been equitable, right? The big dogs we're still eating, and you know, those of us at the mid-major level we're still scrapping by. You know, I think the ultimate currency in all of this is playing time. And I know some people will say, well, you know, hey, the Power Four can offer 15 scholarships. So, you know, the 13, 14, 15 person on the end of the bench is going to be making a lot of money. And the question is going to be, okay, are they going to be fine with making a lot of money, never seeing the court? or never see in the field, or after a year, they can say, you know what, I think I would rather go play 25, 30 minutes and still make a little bit of money and be able to have a fun college career. And frankly, I would tell you, Jake, I think a lot of schools at our level are going to say, you know what, we're going to be fine with somebody going to be the 13th, 14th guy at Ohio State or Illinois that doesn't want to play, because we want to get kids in here that want to play all the time. And I think when you start looking at, right, there's 364 Division I schools. Well, there's a lot of people who can play basketball, and there's a lot of people who can play sports that never get the opportunities at Division I level just because, they went to, a 1A school, or they went to someplace nobody's ever heard of, or they didn't play in the right AAU program. So sure, there's going to be some guys that we're going to lose, or women that we're going to lose to big time programs at the end of the bench. But I think there's also going to be some opportunities for people that weren't going to have the same level of exposure before. And I told our coaches this morning, all of them, college coaches these days, they have two options to be two types of coaches: a great evaluator and a good coach, or a great evaluator and a great coach. Those are the only two options now, and we're going to put the emphasis on evaluating talent and finding the right people for IU Indy.
So what this means, Luke, and I want you to stop me when I'm incorrect, which is probably going to be very early in this, okay? As I understand it, what this means is that each school now, that first off, there is back money owed to players back to 2016. There is money that has been appropriated to retroactively compensate players, some $20.8 billion or something that can go back 10 years ago for that. But more importantly, there is now an annual budget, I'll use that word, of $20.5 million per Division I school that can be facilitated towards giving compensation to players for their name, image, and likeness, and facilitating that not as a middleman, but the school themselves being able to be the one that handle that as an incentive to come to your school. Is that a fair way of saying it?
Yeah. And I would say on the first part, we're letting the attorneys take care of the back pay part. But
understood.
Yeah, on the second part, I think you used the example earlier with a radio ad and paying you. Yeah, I mean, now all of our student athletes will have the opportunity to be compensated for their name, image, and likeness in one way or another. I would tell you at the mid-major level, there'll be a few places that will get to that $20 million budget. Right, it's not new money. The schools aren't.
So that's not money that's not money that's given to you. That is a limit on how much you can do.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think when you see everybody talk about this $20 million budget that can go to student athletes, I think the big thing to remember is it for no institution is that that's money that's already within their budget, or needs to be money already within their budget. So it's not new money, which does add a layer of complexity for those guys. But I think for us in our league, we're going to be significantly under that, but I still think we're going to be able to provide great college experience for our student athletes, and excited to be able to do that in this new college world.
And this, again, Luke, is not limited to just the revenue sports. In other words, if you have at IU Indy, you got the natatorium's a fabulous facility. If there's an elite level swimmer that is swimming at IU Indy that, say, Speedo wants to recognize and compensate, then you can utilize IU Indy can say, hey, if you come here, we will get you this deal with Speedo, et cetera, so long as it fits within the parameter of 20.5 when all told everybody is added in. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah. Just to be clear, though, we could do that now. I think the reality here now is, yes, if somebody wanted to come and tier Speedo, we could help facilitate that deal through our collective. I think the real thing we're looking at here, Jake, is now the institution is able to pay students for their name, image, likeness. So
Gotcha.
I think
so before you had to rely on a company paying the name, image, likeness. Now you as a university can directly do that.
Yes. And the other part about that is most places have to do that because, student athletes can now say, hey, I believe my NIL is worth X. I can 100% say that every student athlete at IU Indy will be compensated for their NIL. Will it be at, the multi-million-dollar deal? No. But will it be at a level that we find fair for our student athletes? Absolutely. And, I don't think that's going to be the case at every school.
Luke Basso is the athletic director at IU Indy. New arena, have we got, if I'm not mistaken on that, shovels have gone into the ground, correct?
Jake, we got shovels, we have cranes, we have concrete being poured. It's my favorite construction project in the whole entire world right now.
You're walking around with a hard hat on 24/7, right?
And boots.
Yeah, you'd fit. Hey, listen, you'd fit right in over here at Monument Circle. They got stairs over there. They need fixing. Bring them on over, right? When will that be done?
Fall of next year.
Awesome. That'll be awesome. Absolutely spectacular. All right, Luke, appreciate it. I love the energy, man. Look forward to talking to you again. All right.
Hey, go Pacers, go Fever. Hey, and Jake, why not IU Indianapolis?
There you go. Why not? Why not IU Indy? I love it. I absolutely love it, Luke. Luke's tuned into the program every once in a while. Much appreciated, Luke.
He cited the program a couple times in there too. We thank him.
I know.
He's one of the few members of the company.
Clearly, his radio's broken. He thought it was 3:00 or the morning show, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Luke Basso's like Shannon, All right, we'll come back. We'll put a tie on all of it. That's exactly correct. And we'll hand it off to JMV, find out what he's got lined up. We'll do it all next. It's a sunshiny day out, is it not?
I thought so.
I know yesterday it was beautiful out. The signage is complete on the JW. Yes, sirs, with an NBA Finals design on it, the trophy, the Larry O'Brien trophy. Do we know if the trophy is going to be on the floor at Cambridge?
I hope it's better than whatever that was last night.
The NBA, ESPN, whatever, deciding to, they did some sort of, what do you call it?
CGI?
Yeah. It was not good. It was kind of floating around, right?
Yeah.
It is funny that the NBA has said that they don't want the large Larry O'Brien trophy like in the middle of the floor for these games for, I think I saw somewhere where they said it was for safety or aesthetic purposes. And I'm like, have you seen the in-season tournament courts? I mean, come on. Now, the other thing I noticed, and I don't know that I had previously noticed this, but I particularly noticed it yesterday. The game, I'm watching the game, and the Pacers look pretty good through one quarter. I felt pretty good about it. And then at the half, I thought, well, you know, they're down 15, I think it was at the half, or 17, whatever it was. And I thought they were still in decent shape, and I felt pretty good about it. And then the halftime show came on. Now, what in the world is going on there? There's way too many people.
Scooby, by the way, was in Oklahoma City.
It's way too loud. Scooby?
Yeah. You know, the halftime act was Scooby. I forget Scooby's owner.
Oh, that's what the halftime act? You could hear it.
Yeah, I could hear it.
You could hear it in the background, and then the halftime show, though, and I know that it's low-hanging fruit to be like, oh, screaming A. Smith, but it was more so simply the fact that you had 4 people on there, or 5, and everyone was talking at once. It literally, I was thinking to myself, I had a headache trying to listen to it. And then you had added in, whoever the sound engineer was, had the gnat sounds in the background way too loud. And so it was very confusing. It was very easy to lose track of what in the world was going on. Totally distracting. Game 3, Wednesday night at the Fieldhouse. And like I keep saying, it's now a best of 5. And the Pacers have 3 of those 5 at home. And they need 3 wins. But it's not going to be easy. And Game 3 will get more into tomorrow, the X's and O's and adjustments that need to be made against Oklahoma City, and now kind of what you do to counter, because Hartenstein did not get the start yesterday. Oklahoma City got off to the good start.
I did feel like they played more minutes in Game 2 with the double big between Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren.
Holmgren was, they established Holmgren early, and I think that went a long way as well. And like I keep saying, Caruso, sure, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's going to get his 30. Fine. You cannot have Caruso coming in and hitting open threes and getting 20 off the bench.
You can't let him go for a season high, and then you can't let Aaron Wiggins go for 18 either.
And Wiggins hurts you as well, yes. It's the auxiliary players. Look at Game 1. You let Gilgeous-Alexander get his 38, and then you just, from there, you have to limit everybody else in what they're doing. That's the thing I thought that did them in. J&B is in the house.
What are we going to limit here? My voice is still, I just smoked about a couple of cartons.
That's cool.
Camels. Let's roll.
That was fun yesterday at Tom's.
It was, man. Good time. It was packed down there. Thank you for coming by, too. Eddie did a great job back here. I appreciate it very
Game
much.
was disappointing, but what you got lined up on the big program today?
Eddie Gill's going to join us, wherever the hell Eddie Gill is today, probably around here now, in preparation for Wednesday and Friday. We'll do that. Stephen Holder with the transition of ownership that we already knew was on the inbound, too, and whether or not there's a linebacker, former Bengal in the future for the Colts, too. So, hell, got a lot today.
Lot to unpack. All right, John will do it, and he will do it with you until 6 o'clock tonight. We'll be back with you at noon tomorrow. Thanks again to Judah Relash from the Horizon League, as well as Luke Basso, Jeff Foster, Mike Chappell for joining us today. Back at it noon tomorrow. I thank you for listening to Query & Company.